on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
Tennessee dominating the Peach State. Well, that might be a little bit strong, but they're recruiting well there. With Chris Landry, I'm Dave Hooker. This is Chalk Talk brought to you by Craft Treats. Please like and subscribe to this video so you can get updates as to when we bring you Vol news, and we love to do it. Go to Chris Landry at LandryFootball.com to learn more about football than you ever thought you could. So I want to talk to you about Craft Treats and how it can help your pet, and with the special promo code that is going to be attached to this podcast, you'll be able to save 15%. So pretty cool. And they have the cannabinoids that will help your pet during storm anxiety or car ride anxiety, whatever the case may be. So Tennessee recruiting really well in Georgia. Now, I'm not going to pretend to say that these are all guys that the Bulldogs wanted, but 6 prospects in the state of Georgia. Does that tell you it's just a coincidence they had some guys that fit what they wanted, or does that tell you that Georgia is a major priority for the Vols in recruiting?
Oh, I think it's a major priority for them. It should be a major priority for anybody in the SEC. You know what's really changed over the years, Dave, is if you go back in the history and you talk about the most quality players from a state, we always, Texas and Florida and California was always in that group. And they still are. I mean, it's still the most populous. What's changed over the past 25, 30 years is that Georgia is entered that elite status. They're in that group. The population boom around Atlanta and what have you is phenomenal. I mean, so if you're looking at the best states that produced high school players, I'm not talking about per capita, but in terms of quality with lots of numbers, it's Florida, Texas, California, and Georgia would be in that. So, and that's obviously somebody very close. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee is getting, the middle Tennessee in particular is growing a lot, which is making the state of Tennessee more plentiful and populous. We know that Memphis, but man, you go into Georgia and you get kids at a shorter trip to Knoxville than from Memphis. So its quality is good, but the quantity is huge. I mean, you can go get a whole bunch of players from there. And as you mentioned, some of them that, Georgia may not want, but they're still outstanding SEC caliber players. I think it's huge. Not only Tennessee, but I know that Missouri's trying to get in there, and that's tougher for them to do. But South Carolina likes to go in there, and that's a good state in and of itself. Georgia is really, really good. So when you're talking about getting a half a dozen or so players out of that state, that's saying something. That there's a reason for that.
I don't know that Georgia necessarily was chasing after all of the prospects that Tennessee has committed from Georgia, but I would say this: it's going to be more challenging for Josh Heupel to recruit at the top prospects out of Georgia with Kirby Smart than Philip Fulmer, who was going against Jim Donnan. That was like playing checkers and chess in recruiting. So I think the challenge is greater year in and year out. How many battles, in-state Georgia battles, do you win against Kirby Smart and you're happy with it? A guy that Georgia really wanted. If you win 2 or 3 of those, is that good?
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing, though. Georgia recruits, obviously, their state very well. And by the way, so does Alabama. And, again, you're going to be a big boy. You got to go in and take your shots with some of the best ones. But, again, when you're talking about a Clemson, you're talking about a Georgia, you're talking about Alabama, just take those 3. They're recruiting nationally, as is Tennessee will. They go in California, get the quarterback, but they can't get all of them. So the whole point is, I guess that is my point, that Georgia is so populous now. It's so good. Like we used to say, in Florida, everybody can go in and sign their 30, and there's still players left over. And West Virginia could come in and get like they always. I mean, just so my point is you don't necessarily have to beat Georgia on all of these guys because they're limited to 25 in a year. And there are going to be some guys, I mean, not the 3 stars, but there are going to be some 4 stars that can't go to Georgia.
Sure.
You gotta get in the mix there. And, Alabama's has always had a lot of success. In fact, that's a big part of it. Kirby was dominant for Alabama recruiting when he recruited the state of Georgia for Alabama, and now he's just taking it over. So yeah, they're going to get the very best. But, I think you need to control the state if you're Tennessee. You got to control the mid-state, which is, big. But you got to go in and go get you. You maybe find a guy that's a better fit for you, and maybe that Georgia's, maybe he's 10 pounds undersized. It doesn't run quite as fast, but you feel he's a good fit and may end up being a really good player in a high draft pick. And that's a closely nearby state that you can have a lot of success with.
Let me ask you about some of those guys, and I want to end up with Shamrod Umarov, the 4-star offensive lineman who committed to Tennessee last week. But let me start with some of the other Georgia guys that may or may have not been highly recruited by Georgia. So we've got Ethan Davis out of Sewanee, the tight end. I think he probably had Georgia's attention. But you tell me, Cam Selden, who's out of Heathville, Virginia. That's not Georgia. Excuse me, I misspoke there. So we're at Davis so far. So we go a little further down. Jalen Smith, who they got over the weekend, linebacker out of Grayson. And then another Georgia guy, Tyree Weathersby, out of Douglasville, Georgia. And then you go a little bit further down the list, Jeremiah Tellender out of Gainesville, Georgia, who I know you like. Jack Luttrell out of Georgia. He's a safety, Colquitt County in Moultrie, Georgia. So out of those guys, and I want to get to Umarov because he's the highest rated of the group, but out of those guys, well, Ethan Davis is 4-star, but out of those guys, who do you think Georgia really wanted and kind of sort of wanted? How would you break them down?
I think they would, and again, who they wanted, they may be wrong in their evaluation. So I don't know, but I would say that what they look for, that Ethan Davis would be a guy that could play there. Now, again, this is where you come into, he's good enough to play at Georgia. He's a really good player. Now, they're loaded at tight end. Georgia is right now. So may not be the right time, the right spot, although in the future it might be. I would say the guy we're going to talk about, Umarov, would absolutely be somebody that you would like there. Now, Jalen Smith is a little bit small for their style, but I think he plays like a 4-star guy. He's not rated that way because he's not big enough, but I think he's a 4-star player, even though he's quote unquote 3-star size. The rest of them, in my opinion, Weathersby, they want somebody. I think they liked him, but I don't think that I think they'd offer him, but not over the other guy, Tellender as well, and then the safety is Luttrell, or guys that they probably would be lukewarm on. And so, but again, it's, if you're looking at it strictly on the numbers, well, Tennessee's got 3 stars, they got 18 commitments, they got this many 3 stars. Really depends on how they've evaluated these guys. It doesn't mean that they're 3 stars because somebody ranks them that way on the internet. How accurate are in your evaluations? How good of a fit are you for them? But to honestly answer your question, I'd say half of those guys, Georgia's not as high on as maybe Tennessee was. It's not. Georgia's right, Tennessee's wrong. They're not good enough to play at Georgia, so Tennessee gets the leftovers. I think that's a wrong way to look at it. I think they're players that Tennessee likes a little bit better, because I think there are other players in the state of Tennessee and other places that in Tennessee's recruiting area that if they didn't like these guys, they're not just recruiting them just to recruiting them. They like them and they think they're a little bit better, and they don't use the 3, 4, 5-star system. I don't either, but I'm using it in this discussion because that's how most people correlate to what a player is: 2, 3, 4, 5-star.
Have you ever heard of the Dave Hooker recruiting ranking system?
I've not.
Okay,
But
it's good.
I'm hoping to hear it.
Yeah, it's gold. So there's nowhere. So that's specifically for people like me coming out of high school. I don't have a scholarship anywhere waiting for me. There's somewhere, in other words, you've got a decent Power 5 scholarship offer. And then there's anywhere. Like I could call up Alabama and say I want to come, and Nick Saban was like, "Okie dokie, I got a spot for you."
That's good.
So those are the nowhere, somewhere, anywhere guys. That's how I rank them.
It's interesting because I too fit in the category of, well, I was actually recruited. It's really funny because this was before you had a lot of these. Well, you didn't have the internet then, and you had some recruiting stuff, but a lot of it was based on stats. So I was kind of local: Nicholls State, McNeese State, LSU's a walk-on, but Syracuse recruited me, and I was, I think, sharp enough to figure out they obviously don't know me very well, and they haven't looked at enough film. Because I played in a small Catholic white league, but I tell you what I did. I had a lot of interceptions. For a while, I had the state record for the most interceptions to a kid named Barron Jackson.
That.
Yeah, but that's in a small Catholic white league, and I figured it out. I said, I bet you they're going off of that. This kid must be really good, and I'm like. So some people are, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I think when they look at the film, so I got the letters and all that, and again, you didn't have huddle, you didn't have all of that. I'm like, Coach, you got to tell him, okay, send him the film, and I never heard from him since. So I was writing my own evaluation. I knew, and I couldn't run. I played in the single high system. So I could read the quarterback. So it was easier. I made a lot of picks. I was playing in, again, not a very good league. They didn't throw the football very well. It's amazing that I got as many picks considering that most people just ran it. But I didn't have to cover people man to man to do that. So anyway, it's an example of – so I would fit in the category of you said nowhere, somewhere?
It's nowhere, somewhere, anywhere.
I would say I guess somewhere would be – somewhere as in because I could have gone to McNeese State or Nicholls State. It's called Nicholls now.
You were in my rating. You were a high nowhere.
A high nowhere. That's probably right. That would be it. A high nowhere. Because really, it was a partial scholarship there, and then I ended up going to LSU and ended up going as a walk on. And then, as it turned out, Coach Arnsberger thought I was such a good player. He hired me as a student assistant. Because he thought I worked well on scout team, and I was real organized. I knew how to get teammates lined up. He says, well, he used to have these meetings after spring, and he'd say, 5-minute meetings. And he said, well, he says, you do know that you're not worth and I won't say, you can fill in the blank there of the words. Rhymes with spit. And he says, I was like, I didn't know how do I answer that. He says, you'd be better off helping us as a student assistant coach. And I was like devastated, Dave. I thought, this is, and then I realized, I'm not a very good player. I'm certainly not going to probably dress out or even play or do anything other than practice. And so I ended up getting full scholarship, full ride, began my coaching career. And, half the time I would show up and practice as a student assistant because we'd go pads a lot. I would dress in the lower pads. So I'd have the hip pads and thigh pads and everything. And I'd just wear a shirt. And then oftentimes, because of limit, we just had the helmet and the shoulder pads, and I just put it on in practice. I'm not quite sure that was legal, but as a student, but we did it, and because we'd be a little bit short on the scout team. So, all right, look, I'll line up a linebacker here, and I'd put that. That's how
Yeah,
I got started. That's how I got
yeah,
started. That's how I did it.
I'm pretty sure that's not legal or probably safe. That
Yeah,
reminds me of Doug Dickey telling me that they weren't allowed to have water and they had salt tablets, and if they were
that's it.
really, really thirsty, they could suck on a wet towel. That was
That
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 that.
that was your toughness, In
That's
fact, there was
right.
something that came out. Somebody called me, a writer in Miami was talking about the great Dolphins team, the undefeated team in 1972, and they were talking about they interviewed some of the players, and one of the things that the players said, coach was tough and all that, and he did all of this, and he made them lose weight. So come in, and you'd say, whoever, Manny Hernandez, I weigh 268. You're going to be at 253. He wanted them to lose weight to deal with the humidity, but he would deny water. Denying water back then was common. You're not tough enough. You need to play thirsty. Now we know medically that's the dumbest thing to do. And and even Don Shula boys just said I was dumb, but they didn't know any better. They didn't know any
No,
better. That was it.
we know a lot about Shamrod Umarov. I think he'd be one of those players that Georgia would have
Yep.
taken in a heartbeat. What are your thoughts on him, a Tennessee commitment that they picked up in their flurry over the past week?
I like his frame, and I like his athletic ability that goes with that frame. He moves very well. He's got what we call left tackle feet potential. It's the type of guys they're looking for there. They like to go with the five-man line. They like to have multiple guys out, so you need to have five that can protect the edge very well without having to add a guy in an extra protection. He can put on some weight. He's got the frame to do that. I like his flexibility. Look, offensive lineman, if you're looking athletic and you're saying, I can't figure out how I think. Folks, look how well they bend. Did they bend from the knees or the waist? He's got good knee flexion, hip flexion. That allows you to be a good pass protector. Unless you're John Runyon, who I drafted, who was tall and stiff and bend from the waist. He was so long and so strong you can get away with it. Unless you have that, you're in trouble. He's got good foot speed. He has good lateral agility, so he can slide and recover very well. At this level, at the high school level, he shows some ability to anchor at the point of attack and get some power. He can move guys in the run game a little bit, but I think he's going to have to progress a little bit more in that department. But remember, Tennessee runs spread scheme. They need guys that are athletic, that can slide, and they need to angle block. Lining up and drive people off the ball and trying to get, power is not something that they do. So this guy is an ideal fit. That's what they've sold them on. What a great fit. You're going to be a pro player. We're going to play you at left tackle. We're going to play in the scheme that allows you to improve your pass protection, which is the number one thing in pro ball. So I think it's an ideal fit, and I can, just without really knowing the situation, I can see this enough, Dave, to read through it. This guy sees, you know what, Georgia's great. Other places are great. But, they run a lot of fast tempo, spread style. And you know what? This is going to help me showcase onto the next level. And obviously had a great visit there. So that's why he's decided to go. Alpharetta, Georgia, by way of Denmark. That's quite a trip. That's a perfect example, though. Everybody's coming into Georgia. They're coming even from Denmark, man. They're all over the place.
That's right. IMG tried to get him, but just couldn't do it. I had those chill pills, full spectrum CBD treats for your animal, and your pet will be happy. Your wallet will be happy with the attached discount, thanks to checking them out via offthehooksports.com. How about a 15% discount? That's pretty awesome. And whether it's social anxiety or whether it's car anxiety, storm anxiety, July 4th anxiety, which maybe my dog got a little CBD for that, they can take care of you. Go to crafttreats.com, but click on the link that's attached, and you are going to get 15% off. For Chris Landry at LandryFootball.com, go to his site. Know more about football than you ever dreamed you could. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.